Yo guys, how are you all doing? Welcome of course back to Rule of Two Review, and today we're going to do a couple more Nintendo topics. So like I've said before, I'm not much of a week in review or a consistent news source kind of channel, but lately I've had a good reason to do something like this where I have a few different news topics that I get to put together in one video. And you know, my schedule, my time right now, gearing up towards summer and a lot of stuff with the band and my job is making it really hard for me to make every single topic its own video, so I kind of like the idea of every once in a while doing a sort of week in review of sorts and just putting a few topics together. Today it's all Nintendo stuff, it's all Nintendo Switch stuff, which is really cool and a lot of fun. So let's get started with the first topic that I want to talk to you guys about today. So the first story I want to talk to you guys about today is pretty interesting because I think it's actually pretty big news, at least bigger news than it maybe seems on the surface. And that is that within the last few days, it was finally confirmed, officially confirmed, that NBA 2K17 will be coming to the Switch. That was all but confirmed, but sort of still this weird mystery where it was in the initial Switch reveal trailer, but we all know that 2K wasn't really talking about it like, oh, you know, that wasn't necessarily 2K. I mean, it could be any basketball game. And they finally confirmed that it's coming, which is really great news for basketball and sports game fans. But it was also confirmed that it's going to release day and date on the Switch alongside of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and apparently 360 and PS3 versions of the game. I did not know that those consoles were still getting the sports game, but that's a thing that's happened in the past with old generations, so I guess it sort of makes sense. And yeah, day and date on the Nintendo Switch, and also they confirmed the special editions, which for this game are known as the Legendary Editions, and I think Legendary Edition Gold. Those are also going to be releasing on the Switch the same day and date, and that is kind of a really big deal. So it should be noted that this doesn't get me excited because I'm an NBA 2K fan. I am not really even an NBA fan in real life, let alone the video game. So this isn't something that gets like me, that gets Rob excited, like, oh man, finally NBA 2K, I get to have it on my Switch. I won't pick this up, I'm not going to play it, I don't really care for me. But this is a big deal because this kind of franchise and this kind of game is the kind of thing that we haven't seen on Nintendo consoles in quite a while. We all know that Nintendo struggled with some of the key third-party games that really reach that demographic that you don't typically associate with Nintendo. And getting these sports games and getting these simulation games on this console and day and date is a really, really big deal. So that's why it gets me excited, because as you've heard me say, for anyone who's been following me for any length of time, I want the third-party stuff to come back to Nintendo consoles. I want the Switch to be the bastion of hope for third-party content on Nintendo consoles, for people to get excited, to get some of maybe the non-typical Nintendo gamers excited about Nintendo again, which, to be fair, is kind of happening right now anyway, because the Switch is so freaking cool and everyone's loving it and it's selling out like crazy. But games like this are important. I've been saying that for a while. I love third-party companies right alongside my Nintendo stuff. And we've dealt with this thing over the last few years and last few generations where even when there is a scenario where maybe a third-party title, a fairly high-profile third-party title would be releasing on that current Nintendo console at that time, there's all sorts of problems. Either it, you know, releases late, like what happened with Watch Dogs, or it doesn't get the DLC on time or even ever, which is the case that happened with Call of Duty games or Injustice Gods Among Us on the Wii U, of course. That stuff sucks. Sometimes it's a matter of not even getting the correct, valuable version of the game, like what happened with Mass Effect 3, where the trilogy was releasing for $60 on the PS3 and Xbox 360, yet for $60 instead on the Wii U, you could get just Mass Effect 3 way after the fact that it was relevant, and that was just a whole big mess. Those kinds of things we've been seeing happen with third-party big AAA games on Nintendo consoles for a while. Seeing this happen kind of gives me faith that maybe my hope, and a lot of people's hope, that Nintendo is working to fix these third-party situations and relationships is actually playing out. To get a game like NBA 2K the same day and date, especially after the whole Rhyme and Ukulele fiasco, we know we're still waiting on information about those, to have that happening with the Switch so early in its life is a big sign. And the fact that it's getting these special editions, again, when you look at the way the DLC and stuff has happened with, you know, Nintendo ports of consoles, we don't normally get those things correctly, so I never would have thought the special edition of a high-profile game like this to also not only come the same day and date on the Switch, but to even come to the Switch. But that is the case. The Legend Edition for $100 or the Legend Edition Gold for $150, God, those things are expensive, will come to the Nintendo Switch right alongside PS4 and Xbox One. To my knowledge, the 360 and PS3 aren't even getting those. So yeah, really, there's not much more news to this story other than that. You know, I'm not a big NBA fan or a 2K fan, like I said, so the details of what's inside the Legend and the Legend Gold Edition and and early access to some of the stuff that I think maybe one of them gets you. Like, that's not really my thing. I don't know that. I'm not here to break that down. I just wanted to quickly discuss how neat and I think important it is that this game is releasing in all different facets on the Nintendo Switch the same day and date as its direct competition, the 8th generation PS4 and Xbox One, not even the PS3 and 360 versions. Some debate and conversation over what version of the game the Switch is going to get, we will actually get. Will it be more of the 360 PS3 last gen port, which would be a huge shame, I think, or is it going to be, you know, an actual port of the 8th generation versions of these games, the PS4 and Xbox One, to show that it's got the game parity as well as the release parity with its competition. I want to believe it's going to be those versions, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Like I said, I'll just be watching the news for updates on this. I'm not going to be following it myself or playing the game myself. But this is a great sign, so Nintendo, I really hope you're working to keep this kind of business practice up. So next, let's talk about one of my favorite pieces of news from this last week, and that has to do with Splatoon 2, a game that I am so crazy excited for, which is interesting because Splatoon 1, I loved it to death, but I didn't play it to death. I didn't get so crazy addicted like so many people did. I think my level is like 17 or something online, and it took me like a year to even beat the single player campaign, which was fantastic, by the way, for what it was. And this news about Splatoon 2 to me is really huge because this is fixing to me what one of the biggest barriers for Splatoon 1 was for me personally, and that is the map rotation. It was just confirmed that the map rotation for Splatoon 2 is going to be 2 hours instead of 4. Now, most of you probably know this, but just as a quick recap and a refresher, Splatoon had this really weird and, in my opinion, completely boneheaded and alienating concept to the online multiplayer for the main mode, the Turf War mode, which actually, no, this I think was even for Ranked Battle 2. For all the different map rotation, for all the modes that it had, it would cycle between 2 maps every 4 hours, and that was it. Oh my god, I never could wrap my head around that, and I don't think anyone in this world, not even Reggie himself, could explain to me why that was a good idea, a smart idea, and something that benefited the game experience and benefited the player. Because it absolutely destroyed it for me, you guys. After like 2 or 3 months of playing that game, I was like, God, it's so fun, and it's so great, and all this new content coming to us, and new maps are awesome, but I have 2 maps to play every 4 hours. What in the heck are you thinking, Nintendo? I mean, I would never play that game after probably the first 6 or 7 months, because all that would happen is, you know, I would play 4 matches, and out of 4 matches, I might have played the same damn map 4 times in a row. And that just wasn't interesting to me, you guys. And I love online competitive multiplayer stuff. I love Call of Duty and online shooters and things like that. But I need that variety. I'm used to that with all the other shooters. I never understood why they didn't give us just like a voting system or just a standard random rotation of all maps available on the game at any one time. What were they thinking with that rotation thing? And while this does unfortunately confirm that map rotation is back, I kind of saw that coming. A lot of us probably did. So it's like, okay, I already knew to expect something like that. Seeing them reduce the time frame to 2 hours, again, does not completely fix this problem, but it makes it way better, way more palatable for myself. And I think that this is great news, and it's smart because it shows that Nintendo really paid attention to what worked and what didn't work in the first Splatoon, which, to be fair, is kind of Nintendo's MO anyway. They're the best game developer in the world for reasons like that. They pay attention to those things, and they're always wanting to improve. So they paid attention to what maybe didn't work with that first game, and I think they also paid attention to people's complaints, because over the past probably 2 years, I started to realize, man, some people really did become vocal about not enjoying that aspect of the game, and initially I thought I was one of the only ones, because for a while, I never heard anyone talk about it. And all I could think of was like, man, everyone keeps talking about Splatoon and playing Splatoon. Does anyone have a problem with this? Because it's completely killed my ability to play this game for more than 20 minutes at a time at any given time. And I love the fact that they're doing this. This is cutting the problem at least in half, so it's 50% less the issue it was for me the first time. With any luck, Nintendo, ooh, if you want to make this just super great, really sweeten the deal, you'll add the number of maps to the rotation. So that instead of just 2 maps every 2 hours, maybe it's 3 or 4 maps are rotating every 2 hours. Oh man, that would be great, and that would just make the Splatoon experience for myself so much better. Now, this last story is definitely the most controversial, and I guess you could argue it's the bigger deal of the 3 stories I wanted to talk about today. And that is going to be surrounding the DLC recently announced for Fire Emblem. And I guess I should correct DLC to Season Pass. So Nintendo did confirm that for the upcoming Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia for the 3DS, which I am crazy excited for. I cannot wait for this game. Yes, I'm going to buy a 3DS game in 2017 after the Switch has already launched because I love the 3DS. I don't care what any of the haters say. I'm a 3DS fan just like I am a fan of all of Nintendo's consoles. 3DS is great. Fire Emblem is great. If that's where Fire Emblem is going to be, I'm going to be buying it. But this Season Pass thing has turned into a pretty big deal. So the reason this is a big deal, most of you probably already, of course, know, is all these different elements of the DLC that you can download for different individual prices. $3, $5, $10, what have you. If you purchase it in Season Pass form, it costs $44.99. It's $45. And the big controversy, there's a couple of controversies. I think the biggest one is the fact that the Season Pass literally costs more than the base game. The 3DS purchase of Fire Emblem Echoes is $40, and the Season Pass is $45, which means for $85 you could get the entire Fire Emblem Echoes experience on your 3DS, and it's a little ridiculous for sure, I do agree. The other reason it's a big problem for a lot of people is it's kind of furthering Nintendo joining in with the rest of the industry in this respect, to be fair, in announcing DLC for games before the game's release. I don't remember if that happened with Mario Kart, but I'm pretty sure it did not. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But for sure, most recently it happened with Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda, and now here it's happening with Echoes, with Shadows of Valentia. And so people are like, oh, Nintendo's doing what all these other companies are doing. They're announcing DLC before it releases. It makes me feel like they're keeping stuff from the game, yada, yada, yada. And then, of course, it costs more than the base game itself. That's totally ridiculous, yada, yada, yada. So what do I think about all this? I think that it's definitely extreme on Nintendo's part to be doing this way with this game, for sure. Do I love the fact that they have a Season Pass? No. Do I love the fact that the Season Pass costs more than the base game? No. Do I love the fact that they're starting to maybe show us they're announcing and preparing DLC before games are released? No. I don't love any of that. Does this immediately jump out as a problem to me and bother me? No. It doesn't really jump out as a problem or bother me severely either, for a couple of reasons. The biggest reason to me is DLC, as per usual, is optional. And specifically with Fire Emblem, the reason this optional DLC doesn't yet have me worried, to be fair, this could change once the game actually releases and I play it and we get the details. But as of right now, there is a pedigree for Fire Emblem of a solid, complete, very large, very open-ended, extremely thorough and in-depth campaign and gameplay. Those games are not known, even before DLC was ever introduced into the Fire Emblem world with, was it Awakening or with Fates? I'm pretty sure Awakening. You know, well before that, those games are known for having a lot of content and, you know, 10, 20, 40 hours worth of gameplay in some cases. And to me, having a Season Pass or having DLC, no, I don't love that we're in such a DLC-heavy culture today, but I've said this for years now. If the base game is actually worth the value it sells for on release day, no matter what that price is on day one, if it's worth that value, if a $60 or $40 game has the content to justify it, then I don't really care if there's, you know, supplementary material and DLC. Sometimes that stuff can be really great, and if it's not keeping away from the base game and the base game is worth that price, it just doesn't bother me. And I'm applying that to this situation because I trust in Nintendo and I trust in the Fire Emblem name to deliver a quality, full, and complete game way before anyone would look at purchasing DLC. So that just doesn't immediately bother me. And it's really the reason why the other element that people are gravitating towards, the fact that they're announcing DLC beforehand, I mean, like I said, yeah, it's not great, and it's a practice that I don't like what a lot of other companies do. But again, there are a lot of other companies that have shown us they screw up DLC, and they screw up the final releases of games. The greatest example for myself is the most recent EA's Star Wars Battlefront, which I like that game, but I hate the DLC, and it ended up not being worth its price. Luckily, I got it basically for free with my PS4, but still, that's a problem, and those companies have shown us that they're willing to do that. Nintendo has yet to really bite us with their DLC practices yet, am I right? I mean, if you guys want to tell me of a way that Nintendo has completely screwed up the base release of a game combined with how it's structured its DLC, you guys tell me, man. You know, they announced the Zelda DLC before the game released. Everyone got up in arms about it. And then a couple days ago, they finally told us the first pack of the game, which to me isn't even really all that interesting or cool. And everyone's all over. Everyone's, you know, totally excited about it. And it's like, yeah, this is great DLC. This is how you do it. Way to go, Nintendo. Way to go, Zelda. And it's like, I mean, I'm happy to see that because it doesn't make me mad. But I have to say, weren't half of you complaining about it 2 months ago when Nintendo announced it for this reason? And to me, it just goes to further prove my point that Nintendo has yet to let us down. Eventually, one day, they're probably going to do this. Let's be realistic. They will probably let us down. Maybe Fire Emblem, you know, coming out in a week for the 3DS, maybe Fire Emblem Echoes is the game that's going to let us down. That could happen. But I don't believe it's going to happen. Fire Emblem doesn't mess this stuff up. Nintendo doesn't yet mess this stuff up. So it's ridiculous, but it's Nintendo just capitalizing on the market and the gamers' willingness to purchase DLC. And like I said, to me, there's nothing nefarious happening, provided the game is complete, worth its full value price, doesn't require the DLC, and we don't kind of start to sniff out a scenario where Nintendo seems like they're keeping stuff out of the game specifically to sell it. Again, nothing I would expect Nintendo to do. If they did it, it's a huge problem, and I'd call them out just like a lot of you guys would want to do as well. But, you know, in wrapping this up, I just don't see that happening with Nintendo, and I just don't see that happening with Fire Emblem. So that's it, guys. I had a couple more stories, all Nintendo related, I really wanted to talk about. But I'm long-winded. I worked really hard to make sure this wasn't too terribly long talking about these, and I got to wrap it up at some point. But the E3 conversation is going to continue going for the month, like I said recently as well. I have a couple of E3-related lists and videos and stuff coming out over the next couple days. Super excited about that, but I wanted to take a break to talk about these couple of Nintendo and Nintendo Switch stories. All crazy stuff. The first two stories are good news. The last story, to me, isn't really good or bad news. It's just news. I know a lot of people are taking it as bad news, so that's why I want to hear you guys talk about it. What do you think about these news stories today? What do you think about the Fire Emblem thing? Does it really grind your gears, or are you just kind of like meh, just like I am, playing the wait-and-see game? Let's see if Nintendo's going to let us down or not. Tell me what you think about all this stuff below, guys, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks as always for tuning in. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you guys next time on another video.